chance to breathe, uncluttered by the noise of the world. You see, healing doesn't scream. Growth doesn't make announcements. And clarity doesn't come banging on the door. It comes in stillness, in surrender, when you sit alone in the dark and listen to your heart speak truths you've been too distracted to hear all day. That's what this hour is for. Between 3 and 5 in the morning, God is closest. Not because He moves closer, but because we finally move away from the distractions, the ego, the performance. We meet ourselves without the masks. Waking up early has become a buzzword in productivity culture, thrown around as the secret sauce to success. But between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not about checking off boxes or getting a head start on your emails. This hour isn't a performance. It's not a hustle badge. It's a return to presence. It's the moment where you choose yourself before the world demands pieces of you. This kind of rising isn't for the grind, it's for grounding. It's not about jumping into action, but about reconnecting with intention before your energy gets scattered into 100 different directions. In those pre-dawn hours, the world isn't asking for anything. No responsibilities, no meetings, no scrolling feeds telling you who to be. It's just you, your breath, and the still pulse of the morning. And in that stillness, you can finally feel the rhythm of your own life again. You wake not to get ahead, but to come back to your values, your clarity, your peace. That's the kind of presence you can't buy, fake, or rush. You have to meet it in the quiet. You have to be willing to wake when it's inconvenient. You have to want your own truth more than your comfort. Presence is different from awareness. You can be aware all day long and still be disconnected. You can be conscious of your tasks, your deadlines, your goals, and still feel numb inside. But presence is sacred. It's being fully in the moment with yourself. No distractions, no masks. It's showing up not as the version of you the world expects, but the version of you that exists before expectation ever touches you. And that version, it's quieter, more tender, and usually buried beneath layers of noise. You don't meet it at noon in a crowded room. You meet it in the dark when the world is still and your soul starts to stir. This kind of rising teaches you to slow down before the day speeds you up. It creates space to decide how you want to show up in the world instead of reacting to it. Instead of waking up and being dragged into the chaos of other people's timelines, you anchor yourself in your own. You begin to lead your day instead of being led by it, and that leadership doesn't always look loud or impressive. Sometimes it's as quiet as breathing deeply. Sometimes it's as simple as not checking your phone. Sometimes it's choosing a thought that brings you peace over one that brings you panic. That's presence. That's power. You begin to realize that rising early isn't about doing more. It's about being more in touch with your own energy, being more conscious of how you speak to yourself, being more deliberate in what you choose to carry into your day. Productivity without presence is just performance, and performance without purpose is empty. But when you start your day with intention, everything else aligns. You're not chasing meaning. It follows you quietly, patiently, because you've made space for it. There's something ancient about waking up before the sun. It connects you to something bigger than algorithms and to-do lists. It connects you to the sky, to the rhythm of the earth, to the silence of your ancestors who once prayed and reflected under the same stars. You feel part of a bigger timeline, not because you're achieving more, but because you're remembering more, remembering who you are, why you're here, what really matters before the noise tries to convince you otherwise. And when you carry that presence into your day, you move differently. You speak differently. You listen differently, because you're no longer just existing. You're living from the inside out. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the world rests under a heavy blanket of stillness. Streets are deserted, phones are silent, no one's calling, no one's posting, no one's watching. There's a calm that stretches across the sky like a whisper only the brave can hear. And in that sacred calm, something shifts. The distractions fall away, and you're left alone, not lonely, but alone with your thoughts, your breath, and your truth. That silence doesn't just exist outside, it begins to seep inside you. You begin to hear things you couldn't hear in the noise of the day, thoughts you've buried, feelings you've ignored, dreams you've silenced. They all begin to rise up like smoke in the air, gentle but undeniable. This time of the morning is different from the rest. It isn't just early, it's pure, untouched, sacred. There's no expectation, no performance, no pressure to be anything other than who you are. The masks we wear all day long, strong, busy, happy, productive, they fall off. And what's left is raw, unfiltered honesty. You see yourself for who you are, not who the world says you should be. There's no applause, no audience, just your soul, finally unmuted. And that's why it's powerful, because the silence outside creates space for the truth inside to speak. Most people fear silence. They fill it with music, with chatter, with scrolling. But in those early hours, there's nowhere to run. You either face yourself or you stay asleep, figuratively and literally. And when you choose to rise in that silence, you're not just waking up from sleep, you're waking up from autopilot. You start noticing the thoughts that sneak in without permission. You realize which emotions you've been suppressing and which dreams you've been postponing. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. But it's real, and realness is where healing begins. There's also a strange kind of strength in being awake when the rest of the world isn't. Not because it makes you superior, but because it makes you available to your own spirit. That availability opens doors, ideas come more clearly, decisions feel less clouded. Your heart, instead of racing to keep up with life, finally gets a chance to speak. And if you listen closely, you'll hear what it's been trying to say all along. That you're tired, that you're hopeful, that you're scared, that you're brave, that you're still standing. It all rises up in the silence, asking to be noticed. There's no noise to drown out your intuition at this hour. No traffic, no emails, no deadlines breathing down your neck. Just breath, just life, just you. You begin to remember things you'd forgotten in the rush. You remember what matters, who matters. You remember your younger self, the one who used to dream fearlessly. You see the gap between who you are and who you're meant to be, not as a failure, but as an invitation to close that gap one quiet morning at a time. In this silence, even your fears start to look different. They're not monsters anymore. They're messages telling you what needs healing, what needs letting go, what needs your courage. The world during the day tells you to move faster, but this silence tells you to slow down, to feel, to be. It's in this space that clarity finds you, not with a bang, but with a soft knock on your soul's door. And when you open it, you don't find answers, you find yourself. Prayer at this hour isn't about ritual or routine. It's not the kind of prayer you perform out of habit or obligation. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., prayer becomes something else entirely. It becomes a conversation, raw and unedited. It's not polished or rehearsed. It's not something you prepare for with flowery words or formal gestures. It's messy. It's real. It's you showing up just as you are. Tired, broken, hopeful, confused, grateful, scared, all of it without filter. In the quiet of the early morning, you're not performing for anyone. No one is listening except the one who already knows what's in your heart. That's the kind of honesty that only the night can pull out of you. There's something about the way darkness holds space for vulnerability. When the world is asleep and your guard is down, the layers peel back on their own. You don't even have to try. You just breathe and suddenly you're saying things you didn't know you needed to say. Your heart starts speaking before your mind can censor it. It whispers pain that you've been carrying quietly. It cries out for strength, for comfort, for understanding. And instead of feeling embarrassed or weak, you feel seen. Not by people, but by the divine. In that moment, you realize that prayer isn't about saying the right words. It's about saying the true ones. You don't have to kneel perfectly. You don't have to recite flawless verses. Sometimes prayer is just sitting still and breathing. Sometimes it's crying without a single word. Sometimes it's asking why again and again until you have nothing left but silence. And that silence, it becomes part of the prayer too. It says what words can't. It's the soul's language when it has run out of syllables. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., that silence is full. It holds more emotion than 1,000 speeches. And in that stillness, you begin to understand that prayer is more than a request, it's a relationship, a lifeline, a place you return to, not to be fixed, but to be held. People often think prayer is about changing your circumstances, but in these sacred hours, you learn it's really about changing your perspective. You lay your burdens down, not so they magically disappear, but so they don't crush you. You surrender, not because you're giving up, but because you trust there's a strength greater than yours. And in doing that, you're no longer alone with your struggle. You're no longer carrying your pain in silence. You're handing it over, piece by piece, to something bigger, kinder, and infinitely more patient. There's a peace that wraps around you when you pray at this time. Not always immediately, not always dramatically, but it comes sometimes in the form of an answer, sometimes in the form of release, sometimes just in the form of breath, the kind that comes a little easier than before. It doesn't matter how you pray. It doesn't matter if your voice shakes or your words fall apart. What matters is that you show up, that you let the walls fall, that you speak or cry or sit there in silence with your hands open and your heart even more so. The world spends so much time telling you to be strong, to keep moving, to pretend you're fine. But in these early hours, prayer tells you the opposite. It tells you it's okay to be tired. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to not have it all figured out. You're not expected to be perfect here. You're just expected to be present, to come as you are. And when you do, something shifts. Not always outside, but definitely within. Because prayer at this hour doesn't change who God is. It changes who you remember you are. Writing in the early hours of the morning is not just a practice, it's a sacred purge. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when the world is hushed and the air feels heavier with meaning, your thoughts come out unfiltered. You don't write to impress. You don't write to be understood. You write because there's something inside you that refuses to stay silent any longer. And in that silence, the pen becomes a witness. The page becomes your confession booth. There is no judgment here, no need to sugarcoat your reality or dress your emotions in poetry. This kind of writing is raw, it's often messy. It doesn't care for grammar or elegance. It just wants to be. When the sun hasn't yet risen, your defenses are still asleep. Your mind hasn't put on its mask for the day. You're not thinking about who's watching, who's reading, who's liking. You're just pouring memories you thought you'd forgotten, thoughts you didn't know were hiding, regrets you've tucked away under busyness. All of it begins to surface like dust finally catching the light. Writing at this hour doesn't always make sense. Sometimes it rambles, sometimes it circles the same idea over and over. But even in that repetition, there is revelation. You start to see patterns. You notice what keeps haunting you, what keeps calling you, what you keep denying. There's an intimacy to putting your pain, your joy, your confusion into words when everyone else is asleep. It's like sending a letter to yourself across time, a record of where you are, what you're feeling, and what you're fighting for. Some mornings, the words come slowly like drops from a tired faucet. Other times, they rush out like a storm that's been held back too long. But no matter the pace, every word is a release, a weight off your chest, a sigh on paper. And even if no one else reads it, you read it. And in doing so, you learn to understand yourself a little more. Writing at this hour gives you space to process what the day doesn't give you time to feel. The things you brushed off, the emotions you suppressed, the questions you didn't have time to ask, they all come back when the noise dies down. You write not to escape them, but to face them. And strangely, the more you write, the less power they hold over you. It's not therapy in the traditional sense, but it is healing, because there is power in naming things, in turning vague feelings into specific words, in pulling shadows into the light where they can't scare you as much. It's not always deep. Sometimes it's nonsense. Sometimes it's dreams, ideas, random thoughts about life, or even jokes that don't make sense later. And that's okay. The point is not to create something perfect. The point is to empty yourself, to unload what the soul has been carrying so you don't drag it into a new day. And sometimes, tucked between the chaos and scribbles, you find clarity. You write a sentence and it hits you like lightning. That's what you've been feeling. That's what you needed to hear. And the best part, it came from you. No one teaches you how to do this. You just start. You grab a pen or open a document and you let go. You write like nobody's reading because they aren't. You write like your life depends on it because some mornings it does. This isn't journaling for productivity or posting for validation. This is soul work. This is you talking to yourself without interruption, and in a world that rarely gives you space to be honest, that's more than a habit. That's liberation. Stillness is a forgotten language in a world that worships noise. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., that language comes back to life. There are no emails pinging, no notifications blinking, no traffic rumbling in the background, just silence. A silence so thick you can feel it wrapped around you. In that moment, the world isn't demanding anything from you. You're not being pulled in 10 directions. You're not performing, proving, or producing. You're just existing, and that is enough. The absence of noise outside makes room for the truth inside to breathe. It's like someone turned the volume down on life so you could finally hear your own voice again. When you sit in stillness during those early hours, something in you begins to realign. Thoughts that were spinning out of control begin to settle like dust, falling slowly to the ground. Worries lose their sharp edges. Regret stops screaming. The mind stops racing toward the next task, the next goal, the next distraction. It just pauses, and in that pause you notice things you missed in the rush. The way your shoulders have been tense for days, the heaviness you've been carrying in your chest, the questions you've been avoiding. Stillness doesn't erase these things, but it introduces you to them in a softer way. It invites you to sit with them, not to solve them, but to understand them. Most people are afraid of stillness because they equate it with emptiness. But true stillness isn't empty, it's full of presence, full of awareness, full of truth. It's where clarity comes from. Not the kind of clarity you force with overthinking, but the kind that arises when you finally stop trying so hard. It sneaks in when you least expect it. A quiet understanding, a gut feeling, a sudden realization that settles into your bones like something you always knew but forgot. Stillness is where the fog lifts, where answers appear not because you chased them, but because you made space for them in the rush of the day. It's easy to mistake motion for progress. You check off lists, answer calls, hustle from one thing to the next, but movement without direction is just noise. And noise drowns out the inner compass that tries to guide you. Stillness brings you back to that compass. It helps you ask the hard questions. Am I moving towards something meaningful or just running from discomfort? Am I living a life I chose or one that was chosen for me? Am I reacting or am I creating? These questions don't always have immediate answers, but stillness makes room for them to rise. This kind of stillness is not about being passive, it's not laziness or avoidance, it's the most active kind of presence. It's choosing to be fully here, fully aware, without trying to fix, perform, or escape. It's uncomfortable at first because we're so used to stimulation, we're addicted to distraction, but once you sit with it long enough, you begin to crave it, you begin to trust it, and eventually you begin to recognize it as a source of strength. Because only when the noise stops do you hear what your life has been trying to tell you. It's in the stillness of those early hours that you realize how much wisdom you've been carrying all along. Not from books, not from podcasts, but from your own lived experience, from your own intuition. You don't need to be told who you are. You just need to be quiet enough to remember. You begin to notice the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. Not with shame, but with curiosity. Stillness doesn't rush you to fix things. It gives you the grace to understand them. It lets the truth come forward without being chased. And when it does, it arrives gently but powerfully, like the dawn breaking slowly over a dark horizon. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., there's a kind of sacred intimacy that exists between you and yourself. No filters, no roles, no expectations pressing down on your shoulders. This is the hour when you meet the version of you that you rarely get to see during the day. The one who isn't trying to impress, perform, or survive. It's not about proving anything. It's not about productivity or perfection. It's about presence, about showing up for your own soul when the rest of the world is too busy sleeping to notice. There's no audience here, just you, stripped of the noise, stripped of the pretending, standing quietly in front of your own truth. This is the time when your soul is most unguarded, the masks fall away without force, the social performance shuts off on its own. You're not the student, the parent, the worker, the achiever. You're just a being, a human being, not a human doing. And in that quiet state, you realize how rare it is to actually sit with yourself like this. We spend so much of our days outward facing, responding, reacting, running. But in these early hours, everything turns inward. Your thoughts rise to the surface without interruption. Your emotions knock softly instead of screaming. Your truth feels less like a burden and more like a companion. When you meet yourself in this hour, it's not always pretty. Sometimes you're exhausted, sometimes you're anxious, sometimes you don't like what you see. But that's the point. This hour doesn't require you to be fine. It invites you to be honest, to sit with what is, not what should be. To look yourself in the eyes and say, okay, let's talk. The darkness doesn't hide you, it reveals you. And that revelation isn't meant to shame you, it's meant to hold you. Because when the world isn't watching, you're allowed to be soft, you're allowed to be confused, you're allowed to not have it all figured out. You begin to understand that self-meeting is the beginning of self-healing. Not the kind of healing that's glamorized with candles and mantras, but the gritty, gut-wrenching kind that requires you to sit with your brokenness and not flinch. In that space, you don't need advice. You don't need answers. You just need presence. A